Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good ever what time of day it happens to be that you are listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. On this episode, I have Ryan Noonan. Now, Ryan and I first met on LinkedIn, and we've just discovered off camera before this, we're both Bulldogs fans, so that's fantastic. New South Wales boys, so I'm the New South Welshman up in Queensland, so it's almost time to give all these Maroon supporters a bit of stick, so that's good to know. But enough about me. Ryan has a great history in education. So he's been a classroom teacher. He's run various leadership roles, from acting principals, relieving deputy principals, through Department of Education in New South Wales. He's been a STEM learning leader, a digital learning leader, and now also a learning and development consultant in technology, which is fantastic. So we'll get into that. But now Ryan is currently the leader of digital technology and innovation at Chevalier College in New South Wales. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Phil. It's very exciting to be on the podcast with you and have a good conversation.
Mate, I appreciate your time, and now even more so because I know you're a Bulldogs boy. So, look, there's not too many people who will actually admit to supporting the Bulldogs. So
I'm a proud Bulldogs supporter, Phil. Don't worry,
mate. I love it. I love it. Now, you've been in education quite a while now, but the first question I have is why education? You appear from that bio, that resume, that you have tremendous leadership qualities. So what has led you to leadership within education?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So it's good we mentioned the sport at the start, up the top, about the Bulldogs. So it was actually sport that led me towards leadership and education. So growing up in Campbelltown, low-SES area, education wasn't really something that was seen as valuable. You pretty much led down labor work type roles. Even going through secondary education, academics wasn't really something that I was chasing. But I was about 16 or 17, went through an issue with my eye where if I kept playing sport, I would have burst the cornea in my eye. So at the time, I didn't want to take the risk playing rugby league or cricket. So I quit playing and started coaching. And then when I started coaching, it kind of drew my love for teaching, which led down a path where as an adult learner, so I think I was about 21 or so when I started my education degrees, went down the path to try and get a degree. And then because I'd done leadership roles in sport and coaching, that kind of led quickly to leadership roles in education, coming in as a mature age student as well. So straight away went into sports coordinator roles, and then led down the leadership path where when you start leading a few teachers, you start leading some more, and enjoyed leading other teachers. And that led further down into the assistant principal or deputy principal roles, and then towards technology, which is another interesting story.
So it's almost to a set, and I've talked to a number of people, and you may remember, because I know you, and thank you that you listen to my podcast regularly, but that you're almost again an accidental educator, that you had almost a trajectory that you were going down, and for any number of reasons you've had to pivot, and you've come in and you've found a love and a passion for education. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So it was definitely not a path in my head going through schooling. Sport was obviously a big part of my life. I didn't have access. So I didn't have access to things like technology or access to people that were going through successful academic careers, or no one in my family had gone through university. So it wasn't even a thought until I accidentally fell into coaching and realized that I actually like supporting children to get better at things.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. The coaching route and education, like, you need the same skills. You need those personal skills. I was just talking with another guest, and we both agreed that we hate the term soft skills. So they've come out now apparently with power skills, which I think is equally as bad. But but it's those skills that aren't tangible, that have the most impact? And I think one of those is, I guess, empathy. And coming from your background, especially in the sporting arena, bringing that into the classroom, was that almost like a natural progression?
Yeah, it was a natural progression. So I think something that you do when you play sports as a team, so I always played team sports, is you build up those power skills, soft skills, whatever you want to call them. And then as they develop when you're working in a team, um, I was lucky enough to do leadership roles in the sports field as well. So had the ability to build empathy towards others, or build others up as they went along and build their self-esteem towards the game. And then that easily rolled over into the classroom, where I had the opportunity to see all these young students who were going through similar struggles, and found it very easy to do the same thing, where I had empathy towards others, lift others' skills. I'm someone who gets very interested in certain areas, so getting interested into things like diverse learning, and obviously technology is something that came later in my career. So it came while I was teaching, just from listening to students and then finding an interest in them that made me research further and found out that it's something that I'm interested in too.
Yeah, it's funny how the path of education leads us, or it gives us the opportunities to explore areas that maybe we didn't first think of, but they spark that passion of going, hey, man, I actually really enjoy this. I've never had the opportunity to do it, or it's never presented itself, but hey, this actually works really well. I find a natural attachment to this. So with that natural attachment, I mean, we've talked about sports so far, but so in the sport field, you're leading peers. So, and that's a tough gig to do. So, what skills have you brought from, I guess, leading your peers into leading colleagues?
I think one of the main skills was listening. So not just hearing words that come in, but actually listening, and then thinking strategically about what they're saying and how I can support that. Or sometimes it's literally just listening. Teachers have a lot going on and they just need someone to hear what they're saying. But then sometimes they need a question back to spark their own thinking again. Sometimes they need some mentoring towards a certain goal. So on the sporting field, that was often around, could be motivation to keep going in a game when you're feeling tired. And then prompting the question about what's something you can do inside your own mind to get you to the next step, the next one step. And then once you've taken the next one step, it's easier to take the second one and the third one, as an example. And then in teaching, it might be similar conversations that I've had with teachers around, this student just won't do X, Y, and Z that I'd like them to do. And it's the same thing where you just start listening and asking the correct questions or appropriate questions. And then it sparks those ideas in the teacher's mind about, oh, actually, I could try something different here. Or maybe I can change something for the whole class that will suit that student, but then also lift everyone else up, in my universal design of the classroom.
Yeah, it's having that creative thinking and that critical thinking approach straight up is that's a skill in itself. But you targeted listening, but you also made the distinction of between listening and hearing.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think is the key difference between, because oh yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what we get that all the time as educators. Oh, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Noonan. I get I get it. But what is the difference that you think is the key between hearing and listening, both to the student and a colleague?
Yeah, I think it's stripping away the ego. So if you're listening and not just hearing, it's not about you, it's about them. And then when you strip away the ego, that it's not about you and it's about them, then you start thinking about it from their perspective when you build that empathy towards what they're saying, rather than just taking it into something that's personal to yourself and your ego. So a big word that I like to use is humility. So having humility means that you are more open to what they're saying, strips away the ego, and you can relate or come from it from their perspective, without having to be the one with all the answers or the one that is coming down from above your equal level on their level as soon as you are more humble in the process. And I think that's a key skill of any leader is being humble, knowing that you don't know everything or you don't have to know everything. Sometimes it's not even that the teacher thinks that the teacher knows everything. Sometimes in a leadership position, there's the thought that you should know everything,
Yep.
and you need to be humble enough to know that you don't. You can't know everything. And as soon as you strip away that ego, then that anxiety goes away and the stress goes away that I have to be the bearer of all knowledge here. And that's when you can actually start asking questions. So I think humility is a big part to play in the difference between hearing and listening.
Yeah, look, you're just dropping gold all over the place at the moment, Ryan. My goodness. So it's one of those things because I mean, you've probably found it as well. It's like, and I know I have. And we're bringing our students, these young men and women, wherever we happen to teach, we're bringing them on that journey of learning, and it's always a surprise when they go, "Hey, sir, miss," whoever they're talking to, "Do you know about such and such?" And you go, "Mate, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
Let's find out." And they're like, "Oh, what?" And it brings them to go, "Oh, hold on. If they don't know, but they're willing to look into it, maybe I should as well." So is that something that you see in your classroom or have seen in your classrooms?
Oh yeah, for sure. So last year I was teaching year 7 class and I had a couple of students that were all over AI, artificial intelligence. So sometimes I would go to them, ask them questions. Oh, what's new this week? What's happening this week? Sometimes I knew more than them and I was able to impart the knowledge. Sometimes they knew things that I didn't know, that they were able to show me or that I couldn't get access to that they were using. So it just opened up the conversation, but it also meant that that's an area that's new for everyone. And there is people, no matter what age they are, that may know things more than you do because it's so brand new. And that's what I've always found with technology, actually, is that it wasn't always driven from me or adults that I was interacting with. It's always been a big part driven by the students and the students finding ideas or using some software in ways that I didn't even think of using it, that they went home and explored it on their own or just used it in a different way in the classroom. So I think, yeah, definitely had those situations in the class where the students' minds are amazing at times and you get so much from other people.
Yeah, if you give them that freedom to obviously, we got to keep certain boundaries and guardrails in place for their safety. But if you give them the freedom to explore, to try, to fail, to try again, and do all those things, especially in a technology area, you find that, I know I've found personally that I've shown them a couple of steps with various software things that I've used, or I've gone, "Hey, yeah, this is the way we use the tool," and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden they just run. They go, "Oh, I've got this." And then off they go. And it gives that freedom to, and support to go, "Hey, I can do this. I'm actually smarter than everyone else has told me I am. And I've got potential and I've got skills that I can bring in." So is that part of it as well?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's being well supported by the school as well. So our school's running some capabilities assessments, so really trying to drive home some of the new metrics um, in consultation with University of Melbourne. So part of that agency and learning is one of the big goals around capability, and not only just allowing agency and learning, but assessing agency and learning, which is a hard task. But Uni Melbourne have taken on the task of trying to give a rubric or a scaffold towards helping teachers assess that. But what that means is when you're aiming for that goal to assess agency and learning, then you open up the opportunity to allow more agency and learning. And I think that's what you're talking about there, is providing students the opportunity to follow some of their own paths, even if that means they're going to fail down that path. And then as soon as you fail, your brain ticks off all these receptors that thought it was going to be successful. And then as soon as those receptors go off, new ones need to kick in, so your brain feels good. And that's where the learning happens when you're failing forward. I think a great example of this is there's some students in design and technology at our school last year that had the opportunity to work through agency and learning for a year or two. And then during their design technology HSC, there was one student in particular that built a glove that was a hearing aid kind of glove. So
Okay.
it would sign, but not just sign. It would say what the hearing impaired person was signing. And
Wow.
that student has been able to open up doors to not only careers, but opportunities to go present at innovation conferences in Australia, and then out NASA at innovation conferences in America. So if you're constrained, it wouldn't allow that situation where the student can create something that the teacher never would have thought of.
Yeah, that blows my mind, because you're talking about, like 17, 18-year-olds thinking well beyond what we would consider well beyond their years. But you've obviously given them the freedom to go, what's a solution, what's a need, what's a want, what's an innovation? Because I've just started an innovation class with my year 7 and 8. But you like, what's in it? Like, we've got inventions, there is sign language, there's hearing aids, there's text messaging, all that sort of stuff. But they've gone, here's something new. I'm bringing all this in. Like, that must have been mind blowing for them to all of a sudden get people start tapping them on the shoulder, going, "Hey, can you come and talk to us about it?"
Yeah, I'll talk up my head teacher Taz here because it was her and her class, Peggy. So I won't take all the credit, but I'm in a leadership position that allows teachers to give agency in their teaching, and she's taken it and ran with it. So that's amazing. But yeah, it's seeing the students being able to solve problems. So going through the design thinking process to first of all come up with what the problem may be, and then brainstorm what a solution may be to that problem, means that learning's not targeted to the outcomes, even though they're meeting the outcomes. The learning's really driven by student interest around the problem. And having the main problem being something that they're driving towards means they're trying to find actual solutions. And this student was amazing at going through the process of identifying the tools that are available at the moment through the microcontrollers and some of the AI coding that she was able to put on the device locally, and then storage, and then the speakers that were able to speak that way. So she did all that research herself through agency in her learning. So I think it's an amazing process to witness, to see the students drive to be successful, and then to have the prototypes, and the prototypes fail and then be successful. So she was able to show that for her HSC, the failure in the process of her prototype that led to the final design as well. So failing forward to create something that's never been created before is something that I love to see, and her teacher loved to see, and then the school leadership and her family got to see that drive even further, where I'm pretty sure she'll be chasing that into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a tremendous point about defining, ideation, failing, redefining, coming up with new ideas, and constantly failing forward. And I'm originally from New South, and I taught HSC for a couple of years, and it's trying to explain to the students that even if your product is a complete failure, in the sense of it just doesn't work, if you follow that whole process and then you take it that next step when you have time, as long as you are explaining and evaluating and documenting and showing your progress, then you are learning, and in the reality of it, it's a success, and you can do extremely well in the, we look at, we're ticking marks and objectives and outcomes. You can still achieve the highest outcome with a product that, or a product service environment that just doesn't work at all.
Yeah, it's funny because I was literally saying this to year sevens today. So they're coming to their point at the end of the term where they are coming to the end of their design process, and they are creating a product or having their product finished, and re-emphasizing to them that you're not necessarily being marked on your product. You need to make sure that you have a process of learning, because you're going to be assessed on your process of learning, because that's what's going to transfer into the future. The product's not going to transfer unless it's something you're completely passionate about and you're going to recreate it over year after year. It's the process, the learning process, that's going to be useful year after year after year. So that's what that's what we're looking for. What processes did you go through in order to create that product? And then the product is fun to play with and look at, but the learning is what's going to travel through education with you. So literally having that conversation with year 7 classes today. So it's funny you brought up the same thing.
Yeah, I try to explain that, and I've had the privilege of being in the classroom for about 25 years now. And I mean, I've grown and matured and learned a whole range of things as a teacher. And I think that's critically important, that you can, as a teacher, you continue to learn and challenge and push yourself. But our goal, I think, as educators, is to teach students how to learn, not so much about content. And some kids are great at math, some kids are great at technology, some kids love science, some kids are great in the arts, and whatever they are. But as long as they're learning how to learn, as long as they're learning how to communicate what they're learning, and that their skills improve and they get better at the communication, at the ideation, at the empathy, at design technology teachers, we've been dealing with design thinking for, I mean, as long as I can remember. Not necessarily called that when I first started, but it's that thing about empathy and ideation and refining and evaluating. It seems to be bleeding into almost all subject areas now, all KLAs.
Yeah, I think in society and economics in general, in general society now. So as we move into the AI economy, I'm hearing over and over again from not just tech company leaders, but now some health and medical field leaders, some education leaders, starting to talk about that design thinking process. And they actually don't name the design thinking process, but us technology teachers know they're talking about the design thinking
Yep.
process. They literally say things like identifying the problems more valuable to them than having the technical skills. So I was listening to someone talk at Canva AI Vision today, who talked about the horizontal skill set is more valuable to them than the vertical skill set. So they're looking for people that have those skills to go through the design thinking process and come up with the ideas that no one else could come up with, because the technical skill that may have been the vertical thinking in the past is not something that's as valuable anymore. It's so easily accessible, but the ones that can do that horizontal thinking, where they're going through the design process, they're coming up with the questions or the problems that no one else could think of, that no one's ever thought of before. So AI is not going to be able to think of it. Not only are they coming up with a problem, but they're thinking across fields. And I think that's what's going to be very valuable to the workforce at the moment. So to me, in education, I think that's so valuable right now, is teaching the students how to learn and how to go through that design process. So then that can prepare them for a world where knowledge isn't as valuable as it may have been in the past, but having knowledge across fields, being able to communicate those and identify the questions and the problems that are really going to drive society. I think leaders, CEOs are already saying that's the skills they want. That's what's going to get you the job.
Yeah, they want the attitude of learning, of the attitude of, I'm going to try it, the I don't know everything, but I'm willing to have a crack, rather than I've got the degree, I've got the experience, I've got this. It's like, and I've heard a number of CEOs of big, these major corporations, these major industries are going, I don't care about a degree. because I can always teach skills, but I can't teach the go forward. I can't teach the passion. I can't teach the creative thinking or the critical thinking. A university degree can't do that. I can do it. I can teach those skills that I need and tailor them to that. And I think that's what you're talking about, that transdisciplinary approach of what can I glean from everything that I'm learning and bring it into this particular point in time, whether it's a problem, a need, a want, system, product, environment, as we like to talk about.
Yeah, it's something that I saw when I was out of the education for that short period of time when I was working in that consulting personal services firm as well. So it was my job to talk technology across the different areas of the personal services firm. And it was funny to see that some people had these technical skills and the vertical skills in their area, whether it be finance or advisory, restructuring, and law. But it was the ones that were really making the connections between the services, and how, for example, the one that had the law degree was able to use the skills of the data scientists. So they knew, data scientists have this skill. So I know if I can bring these two together with law and data science, then I'm going to be able to provide a better service to this company than someone else might be able to. So they were starting to see or utilizing like my skills with technology or the leadership skills of other members of the learning development team there to build that horizontal skill set. And sometimes it's not even just having complete expertise in another area. It's just knowing that there's a connection between two here, that I'm going to be able to make this connection that no one else is seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's picking those key points and going, what do they do well? How can I actually apply it to my situation, or what can I take from them to make what I'm doing better, or improve my skill set, my abilities, like you were talking about. You've mentioned now a couple of times, key phrase, AI, and we know that everyone knows that AI has been around for a long time, and mostly it's been in the computer science realm. But we know, most recently, 2022, I think it was, that it reared its head into, I guess, the general world, the open populace. What was your first reaction when you started seeing it popping up as a technology teacher?
Yeah, I think it's a good point that when I say AI, I'm usually generally talking about general Gen AI.
Yeah.
Because that's what's new, what you mentioned around ChatGPT in 2022. So it's funny because before ChatGPT, I was writing creative writing with an AI called Shelley AI. I don't know if you heard that before ChatGPT, but it wasn't much before it, where it was having conversations with a chat thread in Twitter. So it would talk, it would generate some tokens of text based on Shelley, which is a famous author. Oh, I forgot his first. So Shelley, the famous author that wrote Frankenstein.
Yep.
It was
Mary
trained.
Shelley, I believe.
That's the one, Mary Shelley. So it was trained on Shelley's works, and then it would give tokens towards Twitter conversation, and then humans could respond, and then it would respond to that human. So it wasn't generating huge amounts of text at the time, just small chunks at a time. But then, based on that conversation and that training, they entered that into a writing competition. So I felt like I'd contributed to this first AI going into a writing competition where it didn't win, but it got one of the higher prizes. And at the time, it was deceitful because it wasn't, Gen AI wasn't really what it is now. But it was proving at the time that this can actually generate something that's valuable to us and to humans. So to see that, it excited me. Obviously, I was contributing to that at the time. And then to see ChatGPT came out when it was in the first form, in GPT-2, I think it was, when it was had a completely different interface, and then to see it generate the 3 paragraphs of text, I think it was at the time, and it wasn't a chat thread, it was just generating big chunks of text. That got me really excited at the time. I chased it hard back then. because it was doing something that I couldn't do. So I'm someone who's not necessarily a great writer, but it was producing writing that I felt was good.
Yeah.
At the time, as a technologist, not an English teacher. But then not long after that, it was evolving quickly in the chat threads, and then image models were coming out. So tools like Midjourney on Discourse, and then Leonardo AI was another tool that I was using early at the time. And it was like over, I think it was over the Easter holidays in 2023, possibly. I worked T4L at the department where there was an author on our team. She had published the Ella and Olivia books, and I had a conversation with her at the time, and I said, does this scare you? Is this something you're scared of as an author? At the time, she was very dismissive of generative AI and saying things like, I would never be able to do what I'm able to do. So I wanted to test it as someone who likes the technology tools. So it was literally in 4 days over a long weekend. I used Leonardo AI and ChatGPT to create a children's book, and then published that onto Amazon, and came back after the Easter long weekend and had a chat with her again. And I said, oh, over the long weekend, I've published this book. And then she looked at it and she goes, oh, maybe I need to look into this AI thing.
Yeah.
So looking back at it now, it's not the greatest book, but it did it. Like in 2023, when I was able to publish a book as someone who was using technology, it was crazy to me that I was able to do that.
Yeah.
And then me being the technology teacher, I created another book around how to create books with AI at the time. And then that's kind of how I got on Canva's radar and became a Canvassador and things like that. So I think for me, it's something that made me enthusiastic to be able to do things that I never thought I would be able to do. And I know that's not everyone's experience. That other people are a bit more hesitant, but as soon as I was able to see those situations where it just made me more creative, it made me think of things. Oh, I can do this now. I can write stories now. I can get it to help me code games. It can help me come up with ideas about color scales when I'm coming up with the art for my video game. So it just gave me opportunities to do things I never thought I'd be able to do.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I didn't publish any children's books, but it was the same thing. Like my eldest son, he is actually in video game design, and he was talking originally. Like the first I heard about the generative AI world was from Midjourney. And he was showing some of the concept art, and for him as an artist, he was like, "This is a little bit spooky, but it's okay." And then, but even then, a lot of the those big game studios, because he's in that industry, they were saying, "Yeah, our concept artists, they can use it, but nothing can go public because we don't know where the data's come from." Even at those early stages, they're just like, we've got no idea where they've pulled their original data sources from. But it was like, and so I thought, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. That's like, yeah, great. You can just use your verbal communication skills to come up with the visual imagery, and I think that is amazing, especially in education, because there's so many kids who have these tremendously vivid imaginations and can describe in minute detail what they want to create, but the physical skills aren't there, or the technical skills aren't there. But with these tools, it can happen. And I thought, well, yeah, I'll keep an eye on this sort of stuff. And then, GPT came out, and I thought, yeah, this is a little bit clunky, a little bit okay, but hey, there's something with it. And then I kept on working with it and speaking to a number of people, and then all of a sudden, just because I'm sharing, probably very much like yourself, I'm sharing about what I'm doing, and I'm just experimenting because I think, wow, this is pretty interesting. And all of a sudden, people are going, hey, can you talk to our teachers? Can you show us this? Can you? And I mean, I've now got it in my little arsenal of tools that I use. And again, like you, I'm not a very good, I'm not a good writer. I love to make stuff, but as far as crafting a great letter home to parents, not so much. But now I can put my thoughts on paper. These are the key things, it spits something out, I can then edit it to suit me personally and to put my emotion into it, and then it only aids that. So
Yeah, another example, diverse learning needs a student. So I got someone who's really low cognitive ability. I was teaching year 7 today, so I'll keep talking about year 7, but really low cognitive ability and not necessarily able to type coherently at times, but able to talk coherently. So having the opportunity to talk through his ideas, and then that goes into AI, and AI puts it into coherent form that you can actually present something where in the past he may have presented jumble. It may not have made much sense, but now it's his thoughts first that are going into the system to then actually be able to share something with someone else that's coherent that he would never have been able to create before. So having those opportunities is something that's amazing. Another example, actually, have you had the opportunity to use Canva Code with your kids?
not with the kids. I've used it a couple of times myself, and I thought, yeah, this is like it has that. The interface is fantastic, and it works, but it explains what it's doing. So
Yeah.
that's what I love
So
about it too.
I've noticed those type of kids that we're talking about that may have been like me when I was younger, where writing isn't their forte, and they're creating a portfolio, but there's like 2 words every time they write something in there. But they'll actually spend like 2 whole lessons creating out this awesome game experience where in the past they would have had the limitation of not being able to code it, not being able to create the art assets, as well as not being able to create the copy. But now they can actually use their ideas, throw them into the chat, and then all of a sudden they've got this interactive game where they're like, oh, this is actually good. This is something that I want to build more on. I'm going to spend the next hour, the next 2 hours, the next 2 weeks building on this. And they get to like version 15. And I've actually seen one of them get to version 99, kept going through the conversation. And I had to have a chat with him about chat threads and how it loses its compresses its context over time, and if you get to version 99 it's probably going to be keep making the same mistakes over and over again. But even that process is great learning moving into the future. So I think, yeah, tools like that where you're just able to see these kids that may not necessarily present something great be able to actually create something that may look and feel like a better product than what other people may be presenting because they've gone through the process to create it. And I think they start with games, but very quickly they move into app simulations. So I remember I was talking to a year 10 boy that last year was creating little games in a design class that I was able to teach him with. But then this year he plays Fortnite, and he's got a little data tracker for Fortnite where in his little form he gets out his phone and puts in his data, and it tracks his data over time, and then that's stored into Canva Sheets, and he's got his Canva Sheets data for his Fortnite game. And it's just things like that. You're like, oh yeah, wow, you can really create personal tools. And then if students are having access to that now, it's going to start their brains thinking like that student where he's like, oh, there's a tool I can actually help me here to track my data. Can I make it? Oh, I can make it, and I'm using it well.
Yeah, that idea, and it's. I mean, I've never really been a coder. I mean, I've never been a coder as such. Like, I mean, when my first foray into personal computing, it was all DOS prompting. So you want your character to move, you've got to follow the lines of code to get it to do it. So I've got that understanding, but now this using things like Canva, and just the ability to I love the term is that vibe coding, where they just go, I've got this idea, I've got no real idea how to code, but I've got an idea and I can sort of explain it. And it just gets that tool to quickly, like you said, it's their whole thought process. And I think that's the key. I think that's what a lot of educators miss, or a lot of institutions miss, that they go, well, this particular piece of software is doing all the heavy lifting, but it could only do what it's, as you and I know, good data in, good data out. And they're obviously putting, good data in because they've got that process. They don't understand the black box side of things. So have you found that there's been educators who have gone, nah, that's cheating, that's lazy, that's this, that's that, and you're trying to explain to them, but it's like you're getting a sore forehead from bashing your head against the wall.
Yeah, you always deal with educators like that, and AI. It didn't start with AI. So being in education leadership, um, it started. We could have had those same conversations about reading and how to read, and not necessarily with technology. But yeah, AI is definitely something that's very um, dichotomous. So people can be on either sides of it. But we found at our school. A big part early on from my strategy at Chevalier was clarity. So giving teachers clarity that they were allowed, so they were allowed to explore, and then allowing them time. So even if a professional learning session didn't involve AI at all, as part of that, I would sneak my little professional learning hat on somewhere and go tap the whoever's presenting on the shoulder. Oh, this part of the presentation would be really good if they just use AI as a thinking partner here. What do you think? So I was able to snake AI into other professional learning sessions and then have dedicated professional learning sessions. So at Chev, it's been a 18-month process now where minds have started shifting. So I think the early majority jumped on straight away and they were already doing things and learning things when I came to Chev, but it's lately been the late majority. And I think that's driven by the students as well. So they know that the students are using it because we keep talking about it, that the students are using it. And then because the students are using it, they can't ignore it. They know the students are going to use it, so they're going to have to start thinking about how they as teachers can utilize the students using it in some way. And I think there is some of those ones where they may have been really resistant and debating it, and they may still do that, but they're starting to find some good use cases themselves, which will hopefully feed its way into the classroom. I think at first we jumped in and we were using it in the classroom kind of not strategically, but lately this year, because there's been a lot of the research coming out around the offloading of the thinking when using AI, is possible. So personally, I've seen it, especially if students aren't passionate in a subject and they just want to be compliant and they just get the product and hand in the product and they don't care if they thought about it or not. But I'll tell you a little secret. If I was in that subject as a kid when I was in high school and I had AI, I would have done the same thing. Because
100%.
yeah, it's when they're passionate about an area and they're following a path where they really can utilize AI as that thinking partner. But there's some structures in the classroom we're trying to build around that is just making sure that there's some thinking first. And then it's actually a good thing if their thinking fails when they go to AI after the point, because that's when they go, oh, I thought it was this, but it's not. AI is telling me this. Maybe I should start checking and evaluating what AI is saying. Am I right? Is AI right? So having that process in place to think first, prompt with purpose, like you were talking about before around the vibe coding. And it's all skills around questioning. So having the ability to question in different ways. So surface level questions, and then going into deep level questions like should, why, could, what if type questions. And then having the ability to transfer learning, I think is very important when you're using AI in the classroom. So asking questions around the transference of what they're learning in another subject, like we talked about before as well. So having those skills of questioning is more important now than actually going and finding some information. And then checking and evaluating. An important part is actually the justification of the use of AI as well, because some students will just fall back to use AI because they know they can. When you actually reflect and justify your use case for AI, sometimes it could have been quicker and easier just to change the answer yourself. So going through the process of, I'm using AI for this purpose, and this is why I've used it, and there I've justified it to you. This is my learning has been enhanced because I used AI for this reason.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. Like, you see that, like, you gave the example that I would have been the same. Like, I'm going to find the easiest way to get something done because I don't care about it. It's just, back in the day, like we'd have a research assignment. So we'd go to the library, we'd copy out the encyclopedia, internet came out. You'd just go first Google search, first tab. Yep. take that information, change a couple of words. Yeah, that's my thought process. And you're not thinking about the task itself, which is completely understandable in a high school setting, especially where these teenagers, I just want to get through. I just want to go play with my mates. I want to go hang out with my girlfriend or my boyfriend, or whatever it might be. But when they, like you said, when they have that passion, it's like, yeah, they dive into it. But what I liked as well is you brought in critical thinking. They're going like, am I right or is AI right? How do I then work out what is correct? What is the correct? Not, I mean, because and then that ties back to, as an educator, we don't know everything, mate. I would be a fool to think I knew everything. But I've got the experience of knowing a whole bunch of stuff, so I know when something's on paper or I read something, no, that's not quite right. Let's go check a couple of other sources. How is that a worry or a fear for the students of today, because they haven't had the experience? And we had to go and read a book. We had to go and go to the library and find 3 different sources, and had to but the students really don't have that experience of learning that. So is that a worry or a concern that you have, especially in a leadership role?
Yeah, so with the senior students, it's not much of a concern at the moment. So the senior students, they're concerned about the use of AI. That at the school I'm at, I'm lucky where a lot of the senior students are really driven towards succeeding towards the end of school. So they actually didn't have AI, generative AI in year 7 like our year 7s do now. So they didn't build some of the habits around AI. So they have older school habits, I guess.
Yeah.
Of searching the internet or using journal articles or reading. So it's really the stage 4 kids that are coming through. So year 7 and 8 towards year 9, where they're the ones that have really come into high school where AI has been accessible to them. And if teachers don't start thinking or rethinking classroom tasks and assessment, then it's an easy shortcut to use AI to get what the teacher wants. So it does make me a little bit concerned where students will offload some of their thinking. But what gives me confidence is watching those students that are actually interested and passionate in a subject chase it in different ways that they may have never been able to before because they have AI. I think that gives me confidence. And then when you hear the senior students talk about AI and their fear about offloading, so I've had sessions with the whole school, every grade, and cognitive offloading has been mentioned multiple times to these students. So if I have conversations to them and ask them these type of questions, they're able to very clearly articulate back to me that some of the processes that they can take to offload their thinking. And some students are very, very confident and candid in saying, I just wanted to offload my thinking there because I don't care about this subject or this teacher. That brings up another point about the human element of education as well. Sometimes students will try and please their teacher. So they won't take that shortcut if the teacher says, don't take the shortcut, and they respect that teacher and they've got a good connection with that teacher. And it's relational process as well as an academic process.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Relational. Like, kids aren't going to learn unless there's a relationship, especially a positive relationship. Negative relationship, yeah, definitely not. They're going to offload. They're going to find the easiest path through, or the most. I'm going to hide. I'm just going to fall through the cracks, get through this year, and then move on. But it sounds like, and look, I know this anyway, but I think it's a space where educators need to be aware that students actually don't view AI as the easy way out. They go, I'm not sure that I should be using it. It might help me in this portion, but I want to be responsible for my learning. I want to be responsible for my growth, and I want to be proud of the work that I put out. And I don't think I know there are educators who go, no, they're just cheats if they use it, and students are going, but I'm not a cheat. I'm just helping. I'm using a tool that's available to me to help formalize what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I could like to compare it at our school around if you're in an affluent area and you've got parents that may be home with you, helping you, supporting you with your education, you have access to resources, you have access to tools, you have access to people, you have access to knowledge that other students don't have. So myself growing up in a low socioeconomic area, in housing commission, academic wasn't even seen as important. I didn't have access to people. So I didn't have access to my parents helping me. I didn't have access to my friends knowing other people that may be able to help me. I didn't have access to resources. So I didn't have access to the same tools to create something. So if I was going in the classroom creating a product or a project, which I may give as an assessment for my kids now, it would have been crap. I had no one to help me. It was just me and my knowledge. So then how motivating is that for me for education? It's not at all. So if I've got a tool that now I have access to knowledge, I have access to something that's going to help me create a product that if I had a mum that was able to help me, I may be able to make something just as good as that I never would have been able to make before. So I think going through that experience in education, it just it's something that opens up my eyes about this tool that's actually providing these students with support that they would never have had before. And I think that's amazing that those kids get support. Now they're on the more even playing field because there's the other parents that have the mums to help them, and now there's an artificial mum to help these other ones that never had them before.
Yeah, absolutely. You make that, that equity, because a lot of people bring in the equity argument, like, well, old mate who is on the North Shore of Sydney versus the guy who's in Campbelltown or Penrith or Bankstown. They're just like, well, they don't have the same access, and to a certain extent, there is truth to that statement. However, most teenagers these days have a mobile phone with internet access. So they do have that if they want it. They have that access to it to a point. But it's one of those things where is it bringing equity to education? And I was listening to, and you've probably listened as well, the AI in Education podcast. And they were talking about what the professional world sees as efficiency. Education often translates as cheating.
Yeah.
So it's like the same tool is being used for the same purpose, but one sees it as a good use and an efficient use, and we still in education see it as it's that cheating or plagiarism or laziness. So
so we've got set curricula over a set period of time, and I need to teach my unit in 10 weeks at a time. And if students are finishing something in 2 hours that used to take them 2 weeks, oh, whoops, what am I going to do now? So that's literal situations where I've had those conversations with teachers, and then my answer back is, what are you going to do now? They produced the product that used to take them a long time, and now they can do it very quickly. What's that mean for you? What's that mean for your subject? What's that mean for your, what are you preparing them for? Because they're going to be able to create that in 2 hours in the industry as well. So, I think that's a very important conversation. Another part around the equity one is, like it or not, a lot of education and a lot of resources are set around an understanding of metro areas because that's where most people are. So I was lucky enough to be able to travel New South Wales as part of the rural access gap and see. So you don't understand until you go out to some of these communities and actually see the space that they live in between each other, the things they don't have access to, like reliable internet, which in the metro area you take for granted. When you go out to these areas, they may not actually have it. So I believe that like a lot more can be done in these communities. They actually need people out there. So everyone now in metro areas are relying on Zoom and Teams, and they've got more excuses than ever not to travel. Fuel's expensive. It's expensive to get people to go out and travel, but it's the rural and regional areas of New South Wales, and I'm sure it's the same across Australia. I just haven't travelled to those areas, but they need people on site, in ground, talking with the students, connecting with the students, not over a screen. So I think if I was ever making a call, and I've actually said this to big companies like the opportunities I have as a Canvassador, and talk to Canva and people at Google and Apple, that we need to stop just sending expertise through a screen. You need to spend the money and go out to these areas, because they need help and support and access way more than the metro areas need. So that's my big call out if anyone ever listens to this.
Absolutely. And that I had the opportunity to spend a couple of years out in Dubbo and help start a school out there. And you're 100% right. Like for that community at that time, and I mean, well, what I picked up from it, it was all about relationship. It was all about face to face. It was about knowing your neighbor, knowing what they're up to. Everyone in town knew if someone was in trouble, and they chipped in, and where they could, and so there was that really real community feel. So, it's one of those things, and that's a major. Yeah, a challenge when you look at it outside of our little echo chamber of metropolitan areas.
Yeah, when you think of efficiency and productivity, it's lower return on investment because there's less people. There's less people out there. It's going to cost you more money to go and help them. But to me, that's going to raise the economy, in the sense that we're raising the ability of the rural and regional areas, where a lot of them, they either don't want to work on farms, or farms are calling out for innovation with technology.
Yeah.
So they might be the ones to change the economy of Australia if they come up with the innovations, because they had people on site out in those areas. So I've heard arguments around return on investment, and you're helping more people in the metro area just because there's more people, and you're not spending the money traveling out to these rural and regional areas. But yeah, it's they need the people there more than the metro areas do.
Yeah, 100%. And unfortunately, it's getting less and less because resources are being pulled away, cost rising, and a whole range of things. So, yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Like, and you've beat me to the punch. One of my as we're drawing to a close, we have had like a rich conversation here, and just it's been amazing. And one of the questions I was going to ask is, like, what's a challenge that you could put out there? And you have just nailed that about these big companies who have massive returns, and for them to go from a $20 million profit to a $19 million profit.
Yeah.
But what that return of that $1 million investment into regional communities could pay tremendous, and would, I believe, pay tremendous dividends after spending time in those communities as well.
Yeah, we have the companies here. So we have big companies like Atlassian and Canva, and some of the personal services companies that I'm aware of now that do have the money to support these areas, and they want to. Sometimes they just need the right person to talk to, or listen carefully, like we talked about at the start of this conversation, to have humility to actually hear the voice of someone else to say, we don't want you on a screen, we want you here on site.
Yeah, absolutely. So, challenge out there to these big companies who are listening. Hopefully, lots are listening, and my audience is broadening. But yeah, let's try and push that and support our educators who are in regional and rural Australia for sure. Another question was, like, now we connected through LinkedIn, which is a lot of people don't necessarily like it, but look, I found it tremendously valuable in connecting with people not only within Australia but also around the world, who, especially in technology teachers in high schools, we're so siloed quite often. But if people wanted to find more about you, with your work with Canva, with even with your stuff that you're doing at Chevalier, or even finding more about your experiences in regional New South Wales, what would be the best way to reach out?
Yeah, I think not Canva. I was still going to say Canva. Then I think LinkedIn's definitely a good place to reach out for me professionally. So feel free to connect, ask questions in any post that I've shared, and DM me, and we can have a conversation about anything we talked about today, or anything you want to talk about. I think Twitter or X is a space where I go on solely for AI. So
Yep.
if you want to talk to me specifically about AI and developing AI apps, or talk about Google AI Studio or other things like that. So that's less of my education space at the moment. Twitter and X, that's all about learning and talking about AI. So feel free to reach out on either of those social platforms, or Chevalier College down in Bowral, where I am. So you can reach out to Chevalier and come and see what we're doing.
Yeah, it's not a bad part of the world, that Bowral down there.
Beautiful down there, yep.
Southern Highlands in New South Wales. So
Maybe not in the middle of winter, but outside of that, maybe.
yeah, well, unless you're you go into one of the old pubs and the fire's raging in
that's
the corner.
beautiful.
So that's yeah. You don't often get that up in Queensland anymore. So
you wouldn't know. Our summer would be your winter.
absolutely, absolutely. I think last year winter was on a Thursday. So and that was it. But look, I want to thank you again for your time, for everything you've shared. But look, it wouldn't be the Tattoo Teacher podcast, Ryan, if I didn't ask you, do you have any tattoos?
I do have a tattoo. So my family is a huge tattoo family. So I've actually got the least tattoos in my family. But on my right arm, when I was 15, believe it or not, I've got two dragons and a flame. And I got that when I was 15, and I fainted when I got it. So I don't have another one.
Well, look, hey, 15 and getting a tattoo, look, that's a win in my books, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But
I'm the only one in my family. So the rest of my brothers got Noonan, which is
Yep.
my last name on their back, across their back, like a footy jersey. So I'm the only one in our family that doesn't have Noonan across the back.
Oh, well, look, there's always time, mate. There's always time. As long as you don't faint again, you'll be fine. But Ryan, again, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and just to hear more about what you're doing in education, the passion that you have for regional educators as well, and for technology, that you're approaching it in such a balanced way that you're going, yeah, there's amazing things, but we've still got to be a little bit careful here. So, mate, enjoy the end of your term, and this will date the podcast, but have a great Easter break. And I do appreciate your time.
No worries. It's been a good conversation, Phil. So it's gone so quick. So I feel like we need to catch up again off camera. So thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely, we'll do it again soon.
All right, thanks, Phil.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, it would mean so much to me if you could either like, follow, and subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. The music was by DJ Fruit Salad. Thanks again for listening. Stay cool. Be blessed.